Hello, this is Tom Kubistant again. Congratulations on making it this far through the first level of how to perform at your best, whether it's in athletics or music or acting or business or schooling. These performance principles that I've outlined during this first level, the 100 level, will apply to you. Last video was number 112 in the series about purposeful practice. Hopefully, you're approaching every rehearsal, every study session, every sports practice with the same clear-mindedness and goals to maximize that time. A couple things I really wanted to emphasize there is that put yourself increasingly in pressurized situations. Make sure you set up simulations or little competitions with teammates that will harden yourselves. Secondly, there is a classic distinction, and I have yet to find out the original source back in the 1950s, that says amateurs practice until they get it right, whereas professionals or Olympic athletes or virtuosos practice until they cannot get it wrong. Subtle and huge difference. We have 2 videos left in this series, and today I wanted to talk to you about competition. Now, some people are afraid of competition. Some people revel in competition. Both extremes are inappropriate to make the most out of competition. So I want to share with you an extended view of what good learning competition is. No matter how we improve ourselves, there comes a time we want to test our mettle, if you will, by putting ourselves into the pressure cooker of competition. Now, understand, when you start competing at a new level, you will lose. You will have disappointing results. That's why you put yourselves in those kinds of situations where maybe your C game would be good enough early on. George Leonard, who wrote one of the classic books called Mastery, way back in 1991, said this about competition. He said, competition provides spice in life as well as in sports. It's only when the spice becomes the entire diet that the player gets sick. He said, competitions can provide motivation. It can also help hold games and other enterprises together. To compete with someone, you have to agree to run the same track. Take competition as an opportunity to hone your hard-won skills and honing it to a fine edge. Finally, he said, winning is an essential element in the journey, but it is not the only thing. Winning graciously and losing with equal grace are the marks of a master. This is a whole expanded view of competition you might have never considered. A lot of macho folks will look at competition as do or die battles where they're focusing only on winning. They've lost some of the things that they can really learn from competition. On the other side, more meek individuals will be afraid of competition and never put themselves into that pressure cooker so they can learn from that. They're so afraid of failing that they don't put themselves out and harden themselves. Hopefully this makes sense a little bit for you. In the 200 level series that I'll be recording soon, will have 1 or 2 videos on how to win. There are different types of perspectives, strategies, and tactics on how to win. I will also be sharing with you parts of our 13-volume series we did in the old human performance course of receiving people's different points of view from their backgrounds and putting together a volume for each course I taught during that time on how to win. Today's session is on competition. It's interesting that the word competition comes from the Latin root competire. That literally translates to seek together. That sounds really strange, but the best competitors want their opponents to perform really well. The great Alan Page, who was a defensive lineman for the Minnesota Vikings and near the end of his career with the Chicago Bears, always wanted his competition to play at their best. That gave him the challenge to elevate his game. He sincerely meant that he wanted his competitors to really perform at their best. So that urged him on. In essence, then, you were seeking together with your opponents so that you would all benefit from it. Have you ever been in a competition where you and your opponent or opponents were just performing wonderfully, and it almost turned into a spiraling dance where both of you kept on elevating your games, and it was so much fun, so energizing? On the other side of the coin, have you ever been in a competition where one of the two of you were mismatched and it was just dull and boring and waiting for the inevitable loss or the inevitable victory? You didn't learn much from those. Is that you want to honor your opponents. You want to be almost a cheerleader for your opponents, so that champions like Alan Page wanted their opponents to perform well, to challenge himself to perform well. One of the things to understand about competition is that your energies are naturally elevated, and making sure in these situations that you stay cool, calm, collected, relaxed, if you will. There's this temptation in a competitive setting to become aggressive. Now, that may fit for a middle linebacker. It doesn't fit for a person playing the violin who needs the fine motor skills. Understand that the situation itself will elevate it. I rarely use the word aggressive in competitive situations. I like to using the word assertive or affirmative. When you're more assertive of yourself, more affirmative to your beliefs and your mental side of your game, you tend to be more in control than the outright aggressive person. Now, this, again, depends on your level of competition and your arena of competition. As much as you can, stay in control, harness yourself. I've found in studying competition, no matter what the outcomes might be, there are 3 levels of competitors. Let me see if I can screen share this for you. Hopefully that's coming through right now, that there's 3 levels of competitors. There are pretenders, there are contenders, and those are winners. Pretenders don't believe that they deserve to be there. Pretenders don't believe in their abilities. Pretenders are too focused on the fears of failure or ridicule or embarrassment. They are not properly prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, or even strategically. As such, they tend to make mindless mistakes. So the first principle of winning, which I'll talk about in a later series, is to not lose. Pretenders often give half-hearted efforts and give up. Once you eliminate the pretenders, you might be a contender. A contender constantly puts themselves in positions to win. Whether or not they win is a whole extra series of dynamics, but puts themselves in a position to win. They are consistent in what they do, and sometimes boringly consistent. Remember, amateurs work on their practice until they get it right, whereas true contenders, true professionals, true masters practice until they cannot get it wrong. Huge difference here. And contenders also stay centered within themselves in the situation. There's a neat little phrase I came up with of learning how to feel comfortable with discomfort, particularly as the competition evolves or goes to some kind of natural conclusion. It becomes uncomfortable. We'll talk more about this in a 200 level video on handling pressure, but learning how to feel comfortable within discomfort. Contenders learn from failures and defeats. We all learn much more from our disappointments and defeats than we ever do from our victories. In fact, those lessons help us put ourselves in a higher level of contending for success. And also, contenders know when to stick with a game plan and versus when to adjust and adapt. Again, that's a notion we'll talk about later on in the 200 level series. So we have pretenders, we have contenders, now we have outright winners. And winners from this position, they find a way to win. Concentration and poise rule themselves in those situations. Can you apply your concentration? Can you remain poised in those situations? I love the concepts about competing that begins with the word play. Play your own game, play to your strengths, and play within yourselves. Play your own game, play to your strengths, and play within yourselves. And play. A higher level of competition, winners know that execution becomes more important. A lot of times there are things you cannot control. Conditions, how well your opponent is doing. The thing you can control is, can you execute more? Can you turn a B game into a B plus game? Can you minimize mistakes? As such, you have to learn how to dig deep, courageously battle when it suits you, and persist. Winners also maintain their form. It's interesting that however this means in your performance area, maintain your form. The fullness of your movements, the length, the extension. Here's a word that's in some of the arts that fits into a lot of sports as well, that we can learn from the arts. And that is the word amplitude, of doing things big, doing things with poise and grace and rhythm and balance, and doing things to a conclusion. Amplitude. Winners rely on rhythm, whether it is a physical rhythm or it is a performing rhythm. Rhythm brings us to the point of coping with the pressure and staying in contention to win. As such, they stay calm, even serene in the moment. They don't rush things. Can they keep their head when everybody else is losing theirs? As such, they have clear situational thinking. They stay openly aware and pay precise attention. The two key elements of that dichotomy of concentration. They have the character that allows it to emerge in adverse situations. And it's enduring those adverse situations that keeps them in a position to win. They learn how to pounce in the clutch. They want the ball, as in a basketball, to hit to the last shot. And they relax and even enjoy the exquisite uncertainty of the moment. What a neat phrase. The exquisite uncertainty of the moment. When everything's up in the air, that is still lurching in the balance. As that winners learn how to maximize some of these. As you're seeing that I have a fourth category in parentheses about champions. It's one thing to be a pretender. Hopefully you can evolve to being a contender from that base, learning different ways to win, mostly about your mental game. That after a long period of time in your career, you can become a champion where you found multiple different ways of winning and have class and humility. Hopefully, you make that distinction of being a pretender and getting past those attitude problems and the fears so that you can start going on to become a contender and eventually a creative and consistent winner. Berry Gordy from Motown fame said this in reflecting on the stable of performers he had with him in Motown in the halcyon days of the 60s and 70s. He said that Competition breeds a champion, but you can't have the competition get in the way of what you love. He said, yeah, we competed for different songs or performing those songs, but we always helped each other out to get better, coming together, seeking together. You see, competitors hate to lose more than they need to win. They hate not being able to put their best selves out there and maximize themselves. For them, that's losing, not so much the outcome or the score. They hate to choke. They hate to lose more than they need to win. They perform to win as opposed to not losing. Subtle and huge difference. They, as such, stay immersed in the moment. They are the essence of great competition, and they are the essence of great concentration. Here's how I viewed true competition. It is your own human performance lab. It provides an opportunity to prove to yourself, to stretch yourself beyond what you're feeling comfortable with, or maybe not have yet even caught a glimpse of, and even become in touch with deeper elements of yourself. Here are the similar and important components: the want and the need to put it all out there, not just holding on to something stable or secure for fear of failure, to put yourself on the line and even be vulnerable. Huge thing for winners. To test and challenge yourself. The desire to win, not so much to beat somebody, but to maximize yourself. To have positive outcomes and reinforce your efforts, which builds upon the next competition. Competition gives you the chance to rise to the occasion, to put yourself in a position to win and contend, and learning, as you will in the 200 level series, of how to close the deal, how to finish it off. True competition is even learning how to struggle, how to persevere, how to gut it out and hang in there, and how to save a performance, which is a series of skills and an art form unto itself. Finally, true competition is to reach down within yourself, to come face to face with your best self, your most fearful self, and indeed your ideal self, to reveal your character and to apply your character into your performance, and to ask questions about yourself and use competition to find some of those answers. In an earlier video in this 100 level series, I talked about Richard Bach, about the Messiah's Handbook. And here's some of his other performance quotes that relates to competition. He said, "You learn most when you play against an opponent who can beat you. Play against better folks. Wish them well and give it your best shot. You may learn more about the dynamics of your performance and learn how they win, learn how they bring out their best selves. Remember, there's some neurons in your brains that are mirror neurons, that viewing something gives you the blueprint, if you will, that your neurons will start firing a lot more efficiently when they know how to." Richard Bach always said, "When you live by your highest that you know, the outcome of the game really doesn't matter. However it comes out right for you. Can you go into a competition with the right framework, with your character showing, if you will? You go into that competition to prove some things to yourself." I also mentioned about Bud Greenspan, the Olympian documentarian. And here's the most brilliant and beautiful quote I've ever heard about competition. He said this: "The true Olympic athlete says, I do not seek to be better than anyone else. I only seek to be better than myself." That's the challenge of true competition. What I've been sharing with you may seem strange, may seem irrelevant to you, and maybe replay this particular video, because as you gain an expanded view of what true competition is and how it's used to not only harden to a fine edge your existing skills, but provides you a stepping stone to maximize more of yourselves through competition. Now, you don't have to compete all the time. Just know there are times in your developmental process where the only thing that will sharpen yourself is being in the cauldron of competition, and good competition, and the major competition is with yourself. You don't have to be better than anybody else. You only have to be better than yourself this time and next time. Next time, I will see you for our last video in this 100 level series. Thank you for listening and viewing.